Bagby, I would say that unfortunately, with many of these bills, we've gotten notice at the last minute. Staff has worked over the weekend to make sure they called any bills. And because Delegate Bulava's bill potentially has some cost savings for cost, and then Delegate Bell's bill does as well, staff wanted to look at this one just to make sure there wasn't any related cost impact potentially.
Mr. Chair,
Delegate Bagby.
I guess it's what I ran into was the previous bill that I had earlier today. When you put these bills together, and some of them may have concerns from members, this bill is, while it says virtual, is extremely different than the two other virtual learning bills. I would love to have someone from DOE to talk about how different those bills are.
Dr. Kay.
Good morning again. This bill is actually an agency-sponsored bill that we submitted through our administrative process, and our intent was to provide a cleanup, a technical amendment of this section of the code. Because the code currently says public high school, it would some school divisions might think that they could not offer virtual courses to kids in middle school who would be eligible for them. So that's why we wanted the language to be changed so that it could say public high school and middle school kids could take courses, which can happen now. So it was meant to be cleanup, but we added the language as it went through the administrative process, and being able to expand to elementary schools, anticipating in the future that might occur, and so wanting to make it accurate. And then of course the other change is a technical change to updated terminology. So we brought this forward, and we asked that Delegate Bagby be the sponsor, and we considered it a cleanup bill.
Delegate Bell, did you have a question?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. Presently, Virtual Virginia provides full-time virtual education for high school only. And they, in my opinion, are already double funded with an appropriation and plus the local SOQ funds. If you expand the program to include elementary school, then you're making, it seems to me, elementary school a full-time virtual program, and I don't know how that works because elementary classes aren't usually broken down by class. Also, if you expand a program to include, in this bill, a great deal more than is already covered, I'm hard-pressed to understand how you do that without expanding the cost of the program as well.
And Delegate Bell, I believe that's why staff flagged this one, is trying to figure out whether there would be an impact or not with that expansion. Delegate Bagby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I hate to keep bringing it up, but I guess it's better to hear from you than me. But this doesn't require, this is not an attempt to expand the number of courses at this point. This is the opportunity for individuals in middle school and elementary school to benefit from the courses that we already have in place. And so oftentimes we have across the Commonwealth a high school course that we would want that a middle school student, and I'm hearing the reason why we went down to elementary school, some elementary fifth graders are ready to take those high school courses. It's very seldom, but that's when we need virtual education, when we don't have the opportunity to provide that instruction to that fifth grader or eighth grader at their respective school, and instead of transporting that student to its respective high school, then that student would have an opportunity to take that course virtually. And so it's not an attempt to expand and develop individual courses for the elementary school level. It's an opportunity opportunity in odd circumstances for those individuals that are prepared to take those high school courses to do so.
And Delegate Bagby, as Vice Chairman of the Appropriations Committee, putting my hat on, I will tell you that if you expand the opportunity, and the legislation does expand the opportunity to elementary school students, somebody has to cover the cost. Now, maybe there's an insignificant cost, but I do think it warrants looking at what that potential cost, and actually the Subcommittee on Appropriations, Elementary and Secondary Subcommittee, can look at, and working with DOE, what that potential cost would be to the school systems or to the state. But that's why the request was to send it to appropriations. All right, any other discussion on this bill? Anybody in the audience that hasn't spoken to this legislation in subcommittee? All those in favor of reporting and referring House Bill 1923 to the Committee on Appropriations, please record your vote. All those opposed, do likewise. Clerk will close the roll. That bill supports and refers to appropriations. All right, Delegate Greason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1991 deals with the local composite index supplemental basic aid payment. It repeals a provision that caps the sum of basic aid payments and supplemental basic aid payments received by certain eligible school divisions at a certain historic level. Mr. Chairman, this is a very specific circumstance in a very specific location that has potentially amazing detrimental impact on the overall funding formula around the Commonwealth. I would expect that if every locality brought a bill like this, talking about the individual circumstance in their locality, that the entire LCI would come crumbling down upon us, and therefore we should be very careful with bills like this. The recommendation of the subcommittee was to report and refer to appropriations. I did not vote for the motion, but as the subcommittee chair, I will make the motion to report and refer to appropriations.
Isn't there a substitute for this bill?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, my apologies. I'd like to move the substitute.
All right, there's a motion and a second to adopt the substitute for House Bill 1991. Any discussions on that? All those in favor of adopting the substitute for House Bill 1991, please say aye. All those opposed, that bill substitutes for Delegate Greason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My apologies. I will actually parrot something that Delegate Cole has said a few times this year. Our job here is to vote on the policy or recommend the policy. I think this is a terrible policy that if everyone brought forward their own bill to address their own concerns with the LCI, the policy would fall apart. Therefore, I voted no on the recommendation to report and refer the substitute to appropriations. But that is the motion before the full committee.
All right, the motion is to report and refer House Bill 1991. Is there a second? Is there a second? Mr. Chair. There were 6 votes in subcommittee. Mr. Chair. Delegate Yancey.
Quick question. I heard somebody comment about texting Delegate Weber to come down to speak to.
Mr. Chairman, can I speak to that?
Yes, and we're trying to contact him.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. The patron did reach out to me yesterday evening and told me that he would not be able to attend this committee. He and I did have a dialogue about this discussion. I shared with him my thoughts about the motion. I shared with him my thoughts about the bill. I'm happy to pass it by so he can be there, but he and I did have a dialogue about ultimately the bill here or the bill upstairs, and the slight chance that it would not move forward in either case. But, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to pause and come back to it if you'd like.
All right, we're trying to contact Delegate Weber, so let's get him here if we can. We will come back, we need to tab that one and come back, and I know you have one other
I'll suspend on House Bill 1991, and with your indulgence, come back to House Bill 1663, which we suspended on earlier. Is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, and did we adopt the substitute? I believe we adopted the substitute for 1663.
We did, Mr. Chairman. We adopted the substitute. I mentioned to you after my description that there would be a clarifying line amendment to the substitute, and I'd like to propose that line amendment at this time.
Yes, Delegate Greason. Does Mr. Rimmer have it?
He does, Mr. Chairman, and if I can just put it in front of me, then we can get to it. 1663, Brian. At the full chairman's request, could you report that clarifying line amendment?
Mr. Chairman, on line 13 of the substitute, after Northern Virginia Community College, insert comma, in consultation with the Department of Education and Housing.
And Delegate Greason, the reason for that amendment?
Mr. Chairman, there's a lot going on at the Department of Education around computer science, and we just want to make sure that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. So I think it's helpful to add that clarifying line amendment so that the community college will be consulting with the department as they move forward in this endeavor.
All right, you've heard the amendment. Is there a second? Any questions on that amendment to the substitute? All right, all those in favor of adopting that amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? 2-0. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, there was a recommendation of the subcommittee to report the substitute 8-0, and since there was a great discussion about how efficient this bill was in private partnership and how effective the governing associated with this bill was, that we were not expanding the size of government in any way, that this was an excellent idea for us to move forward on, and the recommendation of 8-0 was the recommendation. I so move.
All right, it's been moved, and is there a second? Second. There's a second to report the substitute for House Bill 1663. Delegate LaMontagne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the patron's comments about the size of government. I guess I'm just wondering, it seems in a lot of different spheres, including technology, that the private sector and the public sector work together to do what needs doing. I'm just wondering why we need to enshrine this in the Code of Virginia without a sunset, I notice, either.
Delegate Greason.
Mr. Chairman, often when we appropriate money in the budget, we appropriate it to a cause or to an effort that ultimately would need more structure around it. In this particular case, we appropriated $1.1 million. I think it would be appropriate to have the safeguards in the Code of Virginia that money was actually being spent wisely, and having government spend money as it relates to computer science and computational thinking and coding, I think is only enhanced when you bring in the expertise of a non-profit organization to do that. As it relates to the sunset, I think if the appropriation of $1.1 million does not get renewed in the next biennium, then this would no longer be funded, and we would have a built-in sunset.
Delegate LaMontagne.
I thank the patron for that response. I would just call the committee's attention to the fact that half that amount of money could ensure that no 4th, 5th, or 6th grade class in the entire state of Virginia would have more than 33 students.
All right, the motion before us is to report the substitute for House Bill 1663. Any other questions from members of the committee? Any member of the audience that hasn't spoken on the legislation wish to do so? All those in favor of reporting the substitute for House Bill 1663, please record your vote on the electronic voting system. All those opposed do likewise. Clerk will close the roll. That bill reports 19-0. Delegate Greason, I believe that completes your report.
Mr. Chairman, other than House Bill